Well, ladies and gentlemen, thanks to the AWS outage, we have no intro today. So pretend that you just heard a lot of big fancy music. I'm your host, John Davidson. And today I have co-host from Freedom Council, Representative Jeremy Friedman, an attorney in Frisco. And our guest today is Reggie Littlejohn, who, Reggie, I don't even know what title to give you. What should I call you?
Okay, so we're talking about digital IDs today. So for that,
Okay.
you can call me the founder and president of Anti-Globalist International, co-founder of the Sovereignty Coalition, and
Okay.
then also founder and president of Women's Rights Without Frontiers, but that has to do more with China. But China is also involved with this whole thing with the digital ID. So.
Oh, well. So speaking of digital IDs, can you kind of get us up to speed on what you're doing and where you're at in that space?
Well, I think the easiest thing is just to tell a little bit of my history. So I'm an attorney.
Okay.
In the mid-90s, I represented a couple of Chinese refugees in their cases for political asylum in the United States. And these are women who had been victims of the one-child policy in China. So one of them had been forcibly sterilized, meaning she was like picked up and dragged out of her home and held down on a table, and they performed a tubal ligation without anesthesia. She was permanently disabled after that.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it was horrible. So anyway, point is, I have been struggling against coercive population control and other human rights issues in China since the mid-90s. And then during COVID, when I saw Chinese communist tactics being just spreading all over the world, by the way, that the World Health Organization was number one, kowtowing to China, and number two, adopting a lot of their tactics. That's when I co-founded something called the Stop Vaccine Passports Task Force. So the vaccine passports are a predecessor to these digital IDs. Also, the Sovereignty Coalition, and now president of Anti-Globalist International, and we are leading a campaign, a worldwide campaign, to stop what I call the digital gulag, which is basically Chinese-style tactics and even infrastructure being spread all over the world to trap us through digital IDs and central bank digital currencies and other programmable digital currencies.
Okay. Jeremy, you got that?
I did. That sounds like a mouthful.
So you had mentioned that you have a petition that you want signed to help people. So
we just like today launched a petition on antiglobalist.net. That's the website for Anti-Globalist International, just antiglobalist, one word, .net. And right on the homepage, there's a digital that says there's a petition that says petition to stop digital IDs and digital money. And so we're going to be talking about why these things need to be stopped. But I would just be so grateful if people would go on and sign this petition, because this is what's going to, number one, help us pressure the powers that be to stop these things. And number two, if you check the box, you will be on my newsletter, like the email newsletter, and you will get updates about what's going on with what I call the digital gulag that is being, rolled out worldwide.
Interesting. So for the average Joe or John, can you explain why digital IDs are terrible and really what they are and what they mean?
All right. Well, let's go back to China to talk about this. China has something called the social credit system, which some of your listeners may have heard of. And so the social credit system, it requires a digital ID. And what it is they take all the digital information and centralize it and put it onto your phone. And so what they do is they take real-time geolocation, so they know where you are, facial recognition, they know what you look like. Okay, internet search history, So you can tell a lot about somebody what they search for on the internet. Internet spending history, then also your banking information, what you spend your money on, and all your social media posts. And they take all this, put it together into a social credit score, which is AI. This is all done through, AI, that AI will determine how reliable of a Chinese communist doormat you are. And if you follow all the rules, if you, do your Xi Jinping thought every night, you never criticize the government, you get all your vaccines and boosters and everything else. If you do all of that, you can get a high score, which means that you can live what looks like a normal life, but you will be a slave, because if you step out of line, bad things will happen. So, for example, first level of punishment, you can lose your job. Your kid won't be able to go to a private school. You will not be able to borrow money to start a business or buy a home. Next level of punishment, you won't be able to travel. Next level of punishment, they will cut you off from your credit cards and your bank accounts. And if you think that this can't happen in North America, it already did happen with the Canadian truckers. Final level of punishment, if you keep it up, if you're a true dissident, they'll just disappear you, which means that one day you are no more. No one can find you and you're never seen again. Now, that the reason that I turned my attention to trying to stop forced abortion and the sex selective abortion of baby girls in China. I mean, we're still saving baby girls in China, but I shifted a lot of my energy and attention towards opposing these digital IDs is when I saw them coming down to the World Health Organization.
Yeah.
So these digital health IDs, and I can go into more detail about that.
Please do.
Okay. So I don't know. So the World Health Organization in the beginning of COVID, was, number one, just taking all of its information without critical analysis from the Chinese Communist Party. So they said, oh, there's no human-to-human transmission, which of course there was. And then they also parroted the Chinese Communist Party by saying that, that if you wanted to stop flights from China, that you were somehow, this was not necessary, and the implication was that you're racist. Meanwhile, China was stopping its own flights internally from Wuhan, to and from Wuhan, to try to. And they said everybody needs to be vaccinated, and we need to have vaccine passports, so that on your phone it would say whether or not you're vaccinated. And if you're not vaccinated, I think you might remember some of the rhetoric. It's like unvaccinated people are like vectors of viral plague, and you're going to kill grandma and all of stuff. Well, I co-founded the Stop Vaccine Passports Task Force, which kind of made that nomenclature radioactive. And now they've just shifted it over to calling it a digital health ID. And people are okay with it. Governments are okay with it. So the European Union and the World Health Organization, starting in June of 2023, has started rolling out these interoperable, international digital health IDs, which can attach all the other aspects of the China social credit to them. So there is a chart from the World Economic Forum. I think I sent you that chart.
Yes.
Maybe
I have it right here.
Maybe you can put it up. Okay, so I believe that these digital health IDs that are currently being rolled out by the World Health Organization in connection with the EU are actually the precursor to the full digital ID, which is, you can see a chart of it here from the World Economic Forum, meaning you will need a digital ID in order to access insurance and treatment, healthcare, to open a bank account, to carry out online financial transactions, to travel. And in China, you can't even get on a bus if you don't have a digital ID and you're not in good standing. You will need it to shop and conduct business transactions online, to access social media platforms. In other words, to be on Twitter or Facebook, Instagram, whatever, to access government services. So in the United States, that would be like Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security. You're going to need to have a digital ID for that, to file your taxes and to vote, to own a telecommunication device like a laptop or a cell phone. And then there's something called smart cities, which we can talk about. It's a whole nother, kettle of fish. So you can take the chart down. So what this is, these digital IDs, in my opinion, and not just my opinion, the opinion of a lot of people, are a way to surveil and control every aspect of your life. And then what can happen is, if they decide that they don't like you for whatever reason, like let's say that you criticize a government policy, let's say you take a position, that in the beginning of COVID, if you had taken the position that that the virus is transmissible, that is human-to-human transmission, which is in fact true. Okay, if you'd taken that position, they would have called that misinformation and disinformation. And they could have, you could have lost your license if you're a doctor. They could, censor you. So anyway, these digital IDs can be used as instruments of mass surveillance and totalitarian control. And so we're opposing them.
That already exists. Are you familiar with Dr. Mary Talley Bowden?
Yes, I've heard of her.
She was just recently debanked by Chase.
Oh my goodness.
So she switched. I think Old Glory Bank is one that people refer to. How does digital currency fit into this?
Okay, so let's say, the digital IDs are basically collecting all this information about you. All right. But how do they actually control you? They control you through the digital currency. And so there's two forms of digital currency that are problematic. One is called a central bank digital currency, which is where, for example, in the United States, it would be the Federal Reserve would be issuing the currency and tracking it. The Trump administration has said that there will be no CBDCs, central bank digital currencies, on their watch. All right.
Okay.
But under the Genius Act, they have established something called stable coins. And stable coins are not central bank digital currencies, but they are other private or commercial bank digital currencies. So they can be programmed, same as the central bank digital currency. So what do I mean by programmed? That these digital currencies are programmable. What it means is that with cash, you can just take $100 or $1,000 or what have you and spend it somewhere, and no one's going to know what you spent it on. They're not going to know that you spent it. They're not going to know who received it. They're not going to know what it's for. With a stable coin, which is what is being promulgated in the United States right now, it's not a central bank digital currency, but it is a digital currency. And what it means is that whatever transaction that you want to effectuate, they are going to know who you are, who the vendor or the other person is, or the other company is, what the amount is, where you are when you're making the transaction, what the transaction is for, and they can block it. They can just block it. And so how can this be abused? It can be abused in many, many ways. I mean, I'm not accusing the Trump administration in any way of wanting to abuse these, but they are setting up an infrastructure where if we get some kind of a nefarious person in office after Trump, then the infrastructure is going to be there and they can abuse it. So how could they abuse it? They could abuse it by, let's say that they're going to start tracking all of our carbon footprints. All right. So let's say that you're allowed one flight a year. And let's say you use that flight to, visit or go to the wedding of a family member. And then let's say that another beloved person, family member, dies. the central bank, these digital currencies can say, you already used up your carbon credit for flights. We're not going to allow you to buy this other flight. So you're going to miss, your mother's or your father's funeral, whatever it ends up being. Or they could say, it's because it's connected to your health records. They could say, your cholesterol is high, and therefore you already had one, Big Mac or one steak this week. And so now when you're trying to buy the second one, it's not going to work. Or they could say, you know what, you're a bad girl or bad boy because you refuse to get the latest booster. And therefore, since you are a vector of viral plague, you are confined to your home, and your money will not work outside of your home. You step outside of your home, it's not going to work because you're under quarantine. Or they could say that they want to limit people's ability to save. And the reason that they would want to limit somebody's ability to save is to keep them dependent on the government, right? You say, look, we're going to pay you for your job, whatever, but you have to use the money within a certain amount of time, or it's just going to expire. So this is a very effective instrument of complete control of every aspect of a person's life. Like the Canadian truckers, when they protested the vaccine mandates, the Canadian government conspired with the Canadian banks to shut them out of their bank accounts and their credit cards. Like I said, this has already happened in North America, but that's a very sort of ham-handed total cutoff. With programmable currencies, you can manipulate people to this very small degree by not allowing certain small transactions to go through. You can just basically control just about every aspect of a person's life.
I have a question for you, and maybe it's answered a little bit by what you just said, but it seems to me that the relationship between the people and the government is as a key factor as to the success of this sort of total surveillance control mechanism. And that in China, not that I know that much, I bet you do, that there's a different relationship, that there's a little bit more trust and reason to trust that the government, while controlling freedoms and taking away freedoms, are at least trying to work for the benefit of the people. And in America, yeah, the relationship between the Chinese people and the Chinese government. I may be 100% wrong, but when I compare that to what's happening in the West, in the United States, there's absolute distrust over what the government's doing now. And so that there's, it took 9/11 to sort of change this national security state around the airports, but people are waking up to it, and they're having less success on that front. For example, with COVID, I mean, originally they, 80% or 75% of the people took those vaccines, but now it's a very small number. And you just mentioned that Trump is saying we're not going to have central bank digital currency, although we'll have Wall Street digital currency, but there's a resistance to it here. And I'm wondering whether or not you see any of that. Is it possible that they're not as successful as they want to be because the people are going to be more suspicious and resistant?
I don't think that the Chinese people necessarily trust the Chinese government. I mean, I think that the Chinese government blew a lot of its goodwill towards the people during the severe lockdowns during COVID. And we can go into that, but I mean, if you want to see where we're heading, just remember Shanghai at the height of COVID. They were literally like soldering apartment doors to keep people either in their apartments or even apartment buildings. And people would stand, and then they said, oh, we'll get food and water to you. And then they didn't. And I'll never forget a video I saw of people standing on their balconies in Shanghai. And you could see all these high rises all around, just screaming into the night. I mean, that was what they were reduced to. They were just howling, and you could hear people howling from all these different buildings. It was one of the most haunting videos I've ever seen. So, I mean, I think that I would not say that the Chinese Communist Party has a lot of trust from the people, but what they do have is they have totalitarian control through this social credit system. So the people in China are not free to say that they distrust the government. You can't say stuff like that. So you ask them, they'll say, "Oh yes, we trust the government," because if they say no, we don't trust the government, that's the end. Okay, that's
right.
And that's something I learned early on with the one-child policy, where people who had been forcibly aborted by the government would not say anything. It was really, really hard to get information out of China, because not only would they persecute that couple, but they would persecute their entire family and sometimes their neighborhood. But anyway, so be that as it may, I don't think that I think that people in the United States, unfortunately, and it's not just the United States, it's the whole world. So many of us are just lulled by this sense of number one, false security. Like Trump is in office, we can relax. This thing is coming around us, regardless of who's president. And then number two, it's very people love convenience. It's like, okay, this was a couple years ago. I spoke at a conference in Bath, England. So I was on a train from the conference to London Heathrow, where my flight was. And so I was sitting on the train, and there were four of us facing each other. We didn't know each other, but there was four of us facing each other on the train with a table in the middle. And one person paid for her tea with her watch. And that got everybody's attention. It's like, whoa, you paid for your tea with your watch. And I said, something, that kind of stuff where you pay for your tea with your watch is connected to, digital IDs. And then I went into the whole thing about what we're talking about right now, about this is not a good thing. And they listened to me patiently, and just said, we don't care. This is cool. And somebody said, I once saw somebody pay for something with their ring. And everybody was like, whoa. And that was the attitude. The attitude is, this is convenient, this is cool, and we don't want to hear anything else about it.
I was a big advocate of Apple Pay and things like that, and early on. The thing is we really already have this system in place with the banks and our spending with our credit cards right now anyway. Mm-hmm. It's obvious. You can't go to the bank. They don't have all the money that you put in the bank when you need it. If you wanted to cash out all of your cash, or like with Jeremy and his cash, I probably had a bit more than mine, but
negative.
But yeah, you know what I mean? Like, so already the system kind of exists. It's just, we're taking it off of the card and putting it into devices that are trackable, like you say. But I want to play, if you don't mind, a little 3-minute video that tells the story of CBDC in Thailand. Are you familiar with their rollout of that?
Not particularly. So I look forward to listening to this video.
Yeah, this is I heard it yesterday, and then we connected with you, and I was like, well, this is all supposed to happen. So okay. Let me just play this and see what you think.
All right.
Once you've got everything under one roof and you've got all your ID together in one place, it means you can be switched off at the touch of a button. So they brought this system in Thailand, and suddenly, like simultaneously, over 3 million people had their bank accounts shut down. Oh. Thailand has become a case study for the use of biometric data in every facet of life. Every banking transaction is monitored and scrutinised. Any perceived discrepancy is flagged as fraud and punished without due process. Regulations have overwhelmed the system, resulting in a full-fledged banking crisis. Over 3 million Thai bank accounts were frozen instantaneously without warning as a result of government overreach. Transaction denied. You contact your bank to see why the payment failed, only to learn that your account has been frozen. All of your accounts, for that matter. The bank is investigating you for suspicious activity and potential money laundering or fraud. There was no warning, call or letter, and there is no clarification as to what transaction was flagged. You're completely locked out of your accounts. You have lost the ability to purchase. You cannot fill your gas tank. You cannot purchase groceries. You've been completely removed from the financial system, and you do not know when or if you will regain access to your funds. This is the reality for millions of people banking in Thailand. That's crazy stuff, folks, and this freaked the entire country out. But the article goes on to say thousands of accounts are frozen each week. Panic has ensued. Retailers are no longer accepting cards, demanding payment in cash, as they too are worried that they will be removed from the banking system. Confidence in the government and the entire banking system evaporated. People rationally fear that their account will be targeted next without warning. Government overreach has backfired, and the people are removing themselves from the banking system entirely. And that's a really good thing to see, folks. Yeah, so it backfired. And it caused the people in Thailand to see how much they need to keep cash alive and depend on cash. And they're saying it serves as a test case for what this digital ID is going to do. Well, it also serves as a test case for why you shouldn't accept it. And so many of us have been warning about this for so long, folks, and it's imperative that people see this, because this is what's been going on. All everyone's been arguing over whether Charlie Kirk died or whether he didn't, it doesn't matter. What matters is what they're going to do with it.
That's fascinating, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
What I love about that, though, are that the people and the retailers were like, screw you, banks, cash only, which is a complete backfire.
Yeah. Okay. So what? Okay. So that's a wonderful and a fascinating video, and so I have two comments about it. Number one, they did not outlaw cash before they did this. So that's the thing that we have to do, is use cash. Cash is king. They were able to survive because cash was still valid. And so that's something we have to really resist in the United States and the rest of the world. Any government regulation that makes cash illegal, that everything has to be paid for digitally. All right. So that's number one. And then number two, they talked about a biometric system. So I don't know why these accounts were frozen, but it might be because the people had not gotten around to or refused to submit their biometric data in connection with their bank account. Yeah. And so this is another thing. This is another trap of biometric data. It's a way of absolutely surveilling people. But the thing that I'm also worried about in the United States and elsewhere is not just shutting people down because they have not submitted their biometric data, although that is also, that's an issue. But it's also tracking us, tracing us, profiling us, and then under an administration that might be hostile to Christian values, for example, or conservative values, that let's say that you have a history on social media of being pro-life or pro-family or whatever it is, then they could shut you down on that basis. That, in fact, call it hate speech. Oh, you're pro-life, you're anti-abortion. That's hate speech. And then you can become a potential domestic threat actor, in which case they can surveil you even more and you lose your constitutional rights. So I am worried about this entire system as being a way to suppress dissent.
I wonder, if I may, I wonder to the extent that there is, what I really liked about that clip is the fact that there's overreach in this and that there's pushback as a result. Mm-hmm. And I'm wondering what your thoughts are on that. I mean, you mentioned the Canadian truckers, and that protest sort of took off, and it showed people in, south of that border that there is a basis to resist and to stand together, even though you weren't able to see it in our media here. And then when they started debanking the Canadian protesters, or even people who contributed to
Right.
the protesters. That had a backlash, and I think it's similar to the backlash that is going on currently over the COVID mandates and the vaccines and the lockdowns. I think that they still hold the power in terms of media. They may still hold the powers of the government. They clearly do. I don't think Trump's going to be that much different in some of these, although obviously we can talk about it more. But really what's happening is that every time they overreach, the pushback limits their power and empowers us, empowers we the people. So what are your thoughts on that? I know you have to remain vigilant in warning us. But do you get some comfort out of seeing some light at the end of the tunnel, or at least some encouraging signs that you're no longer fighting and screaming into the void, that people are supporting you and understanding the points that you are raising and making it part of their existence?
No.
No.
I mean, okay, so let's talk about the Canadian truckers. You say there was pushback. Okay, there's pushback, but the fact is that they broke up the protest. And Canada has continued along the same lines as the rest of the world in imposing all of this stuff. And I would like to see I am very grateful to you for having me on and to try to raise the visibility of this issue. But right now, these stable coins are rolling out. Digital IDs are rolling out all over the world. I mean, I just got back from Europe. I testified at the European Parliament last. I didn't say I testified. I spoke at the European Parliament last Wednesday about a number of things, a number of dangers that are coming down from the World Health Organization, including these digital IDs. But there are protests in Europe, but I feel like we're in a race to the finish line. I feel like the people who want to establish this digital gulag, this coup, this totalitarian coup, are racing as fast as they can to try to install these central bank digital currencies, which most of the countries in the world either have a central bank digital currency or they have one in development. And they're trying to roll this out before people wake up and realize that they're in a trap so that they can spring out. They want to spring it shut before we can spring out of it. And so I am just doing everything I can. I did an X space this morning. I'm doing this interview. I'm doing another interview at 4:00. I'm just pouring myself out, try to raise the alarm. And it's not clear to me that we have the upper hand, or that what is clear to me is that, okay, I'll say this. Yes, people are beginning to wake up. Yes, momentum is building. Yes, that's a hopeful sign. Is it building fast enough for us to be able to get out of the trap before it's sprung? I'm not going to say that I think it is. I think that we need to really work as hard as we can to make sure that that happens.
Do you think Bitcoin is a solution?
Yeah, I think that Bitcoin, this is something people need to understand, is that Bitcoin is completely different from these central bank digital currencies or stable coins because it's decentralized by its nature. So that is that, but although I have to say I don't invest in Bitcoin because I'm worried because it is digital. Like if you lose your password, you can lose the whole thing. Yeah, I mean, I think gold and silver is a safe bet. But anyway, but yes, Bitcoin is completely different from these central bank digital currencies and stable coins. So I think it can be a solution for people.
Okay, so digital marketplaces with Bitcoin as an option are good things.
Yeah, I know, but what are you going to do if the grid goes down? You know what I'm saying? You're going to lose. And that's not an impossibility. It could go down easily. I mean, there could be an EMP strike from China. There could be a sun flare that just hits the earth and burns out our grid.
Well, in that instance, your bigger concern is going to be which one of your neighbor's dogs are you going to eat first.
Right, right. And we're going to be, in a big and hurting way. And
Yeah, we'll have way worse problems than, who's watching my Amazon purchases.
They won't necessarily have to bring the grid down. They can just simply impose this digital ID to access the internet in the first instance.
That's right.
One way.
Right. That's
So
right. So,
it's hard to imagine a world where we can guarantee that we can somehow decentralize power and keep it with the people. But at the same time, I don't know how successful all of these efforts will be in the long run. And maybe my questions are irrelevant because you're in the fight today and you're seeing all the possibilities that could happen now. And I see a lot of changes happening, even if it's not manifesting itself yet in government decisions and certainly not in mainstream media, because of people like you and those speeches. I mean, I can now go online and I watched what you had to say in front of the European Parliament, and it was tremendously inspiring. And I don't think you're alone. I think I'm not alone either in hearing this. I think a lot of people understand it, know it, want to resist it. They were able, like I said earlier, they were able to push through a lot after 9/11 in terms of taking away our freedom of travel and more surveillance and these pat downs at the airport security. There's molestation, but yet I don't think they could do that again today. And I think they're losing some of their ability to keep at it. And the COVID madness definitely is failing in the people's minds, even if it's not yet stripped from the government power. So I'm just curious as to where we can turn people power. How do you find that in the efforts that you're making to talk about it and to make changes and to protect against these changes that are coming our way or seemingly coming our way? How can we harness the power of we the people on once you explain to them what needs to be done? How do we then turn that into change?
Well, okay. So again, I've got this petition that I put up on my website on antiglobalist.net. It says no digital IDs, no digital money, and sign the petition because I will be presenting, the figures of people, 10,000, 100,000, a million people have signed this petition saying no digital IDs, no digital money, and send that to the Trump administration. And you can also call your senators, call your congressional representatives. But if you do this, if you sign this, then you will be on our newsletter list and you will get an email about updates and what is the latest and what you can do about it and join the movement. I mean, it is overwhelming. And believe me, I feel overwhelmed. It's just like, oh my gosh, every day it's like this avalanche of all these things that are happening all over the world, that are closing this digital gulag around us. But everybody needs to do something. So this is what I'm doing. I am speaking to you. I'm leading Anti-Globalist International. I'm doing the things that I'm doing. But if you feel overwhelmed, you do one thing. Okay, you can sign up. Sign the petition, and then you can do whatever is in front of you. I mean, I would say just pray. Number one, pray that we will be able to escape this trap. And that God's will prevail, but also pray about what God would have you do, because it might not be give your entire life to this issue, but it's not going to be nothing either. And if everybody does, their part in all of this, that's the hope that we have to overcome it.
I like that.
If I may, John. So one of the things that I'm interested in as a lawyer is, what can we do in the courts and with the legal system? And I'm interested, number one, in your transition, if there was a transition from being, you said you started out doing these political asylum cases, and now we see you organizing this petition and starting these organizations that are so needed. I wonder, did you sort of go through a transition for yourself in terms of no longer necessarily looking at litigation as a way of addressing these issues? And from your perspective, is there something we can do in terms of litigation? I'm very interested. California has a constitutional right to privacy, which applies to private companies, not just the government. And it was passed by referendum because the people not only wanted to preserve the federal rule on sort of bodily autonomy, but create a new state rule that said private companies and government entities are not supposed to track us anymore. They're not supposed to collect our data about ourselves anymore. And I'm wondering, that's a constitutional provision, should take precedent over statutory provisions. I'm wondering whether or not there are avenues to sue. If you get debanked, isn't that a deprivation of your property without due process? What do you think of of not being in litigation and accomplishing what you are, which is tremendous, in other forums? And do you think that there is a litigation tool that people could use?
Well, as a former litigator, I am a huge advocate for litigation. But the thing, and the reason I'm not a litigator, I'm not litigating these things, is it takes so much money to do that, and I'm glad. I just thank God for you and for Warner Mendenhall and for the litigators that are on the front lines. And I think everybody should donate to you, because these litigation strategies, they're long-term, they're very highly resource intensive, and they can also be extremely effective. So just the more power to you. I don't have the resources to litigate. I mean, I can do so much as an activist on next to nothing. But litigation takes substantial resources. And I think that all of the theories that you just spun out are valid. And I would just say, go and pursue it. I think that what you're doing is great, and what I'm doing is just what I can do without those kind of resources.
Well, I don't think that we would even know which direction to go to if it wasn't for you and people like you that are making it clear what's going on. We need to know, to be able to fight the fights. We have to know what fight we're in the midst of. So it goes hand in hand. But I'm curious as to have you seen any sort of successful litigations on this front? The digital ID stuff, I have not yet seen my own. At least I personally haven't had my practice devoted to it. But when I saw them debank the truckers in Canada, I thought for sure this is going to be a mess for them. Even though it was a horrific thing for us to see happen, that this is going to cause them trouble. And I do think courts tend to need to have a little bit more sense of legitimacy than the government systems and the agencies, right? They can get captured, they can speak nonsense, and as long as they've got the media to control it, the courts need to retain a certain amount of sense of legitimacy. And I think that's a force that persists.
Well, I mean, and the thing about the court system is that there are a lot of people who were political. I mean, they're not political appointees, but you know what I'm saying, that so that people do forum shopping to try to get their case heard by a judge that they're hoping will at least listen to them. So it's, there's a lot that goes into deciding where, when, how to file and what to file. So I would leave it to you, because you're the one who's practicing litigation right now, to make the decisions on those fronts. And I'm an activist. So what I do is as an attorney, okay, I am able to analyze massive, complicated documents written in legalese, like the ones that come out of the World Health Organization or the United Nations, and say in plain language what they mean and how they impact our freedoms and how they're going to deprive us of our constitutional rights And so sound the alarm and try to get people to take action to preserve our freedom. That's the role I see myself in.
Here.
Sorry, yeah.
Okay.
I'm having the worst green screen in history today. I blame Amazon.
You look fine.
You look fine.
Well, it's fixed now, but it's been a battle this whole
Oh, look
hour.
at this. Now everybody disappeared. I am seeing redwood trees.
What?
Yeah.
I think your screensaver just kicked in.
That's what it is. Let me get back to you. I'm back.
Oh, the WAF is under your table.
I'll tell you,
Cutting cables.
I'll tell you, this morning we had, an X space, and we had two really heavy hitters on that X space, and both of them had the hardest time getting on. Like the main speakers were the ones that had the hardest time to get on. So I don't know, pretty coincidental.
Yeah. So as we wrap up, what would you like to add? Where do we go from here?
Okay, so something that I would ask people to pay attention to it is you can't just say, okay, President Trump is in office, conservatives are in office, and so we can just unplug and just relax because we worked so hard, during the previous administration, and now we've got, we're protected by, President Trump, we're protected by the Constitution, and so we can just go on and lead our lives, and just lead our private lives, and just wish that everybody would just leave us alone. You can't do that. You need to stay engaged, because President Trump cannot by himself defeat this digital gulag and the globalist coup that is upon us. He can resist it, but he can't do it on his own, number one. And number two, legislators are not going to take action unless they know that their constituents have the political will for them to take action. And a lot of legislators are not even following these issues. They've got stuff coming at them from all sides. So, the squeaky wheel gets the oil. You need to take action. Again, I'd say go to antiglobalist.net, sign the petition, contact your congressional representative, say we don't want digital IDs. We don't want, because there's something called the real ID that's being floated out in the United States. Like you must have this in order to fly. Actually, that is not true. You can use a passport. You can use any number of IDs to fly. But what they're trying to do is any interoperable mandatory digital ID can serve as the technical platform for the China social credit system. And you got to resist them all. You got to remain vigilant and do your part in resisting it.
I don't even think we have to wait for it to get here from China. It's already been here. I've had multiple channels taken down from YouTube, TikTok, I think probably Twitter back in the day, Facebook. We get flagged, we get throttled. The algorithm is designed to suppress us. Somehow I magically sit at 66,000 followers on Twitter for over a year, and that's statistically impossible, but there it is. And that's with Elon owning it. So, there's some weird stuff still at play even now. And, DARPA had social media systems that they developed. And DARPA was also directly involved with a lot of the early COVID behaviors that our federal government did. January 2020, COVID, DARPA was involved. So that was before we even knew what it was or thought we knew what it was. Anyway, it's already here. The question is, what can we do to prevent it from being permanent? How do we prevent a YouTube organization, which is, I believe, a primary American company, correct?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
How do we get them to stop censoring Americans over the advice of a ridiculous organization like the WHO?
Well, number one, we have to have the right people in office. So President Trump withdrew us from the WHO. So thank God for that. But it was done by executive order. which means that the next president, if he or she is so inclined, could just slam us right back in. And that's why I've got an action item on my website. There's an icon that says "Take Action," where you can send an email to your representatives or congressional representatives to encode it in legislation that the United States is withdrawing from the World Health Organization, so that the next president can't just push us right back in.
Right.
But in any case, I wouldn't disagree with you that it's already here, and I've heard it said that the digital gulag, the panopticon, has already arrived, but they just haven't activated it yet. So
they're just not visible.
That's right. It's not. It's like in the air around us, and it's digital.
It's becoming visible every time you speak, and every time that somebody signs that petition, and every time that somebody raises their voice. I don't have any faith or trust that any politician is going to do the right thing. However, I do recognize that when Trump does something that's positive, it's because he's trying to capture the populace, the power of we the people. Yeah.
Is this a Patriot Act thing, part of it?
I think I'm not sure that it's directly related to the Patriot Act. It might be, and maybe Jeremy knows better than I do about the history of the Patriot Act and whether it's being shoehorned into the current situation or not. But it's in alignment with it. Okay, it's the Patriot Act was created after a massive crisis, and ostensibly to protect us. Meanwhile, setting a framework that could be used to deprive us of our rights. And that is similar to what happened under COVID. So they're sort of like sisters, I would think, or maybe one came from the other.
Any fear-based trigger or manipulation of society, we need to look at the outcome of that and maybe try to undo the damage from the actual mitigation.
Right, exactly.
They know it's not only do they want to not let a good crisis go to waste, they're willing to create a crisis in order to get their way. But absolutely. I think that the more they do that and the more they overreach, the truth and history still have a bend to it. And maybe while we're swimming in it or fighting through it, it looks overwhelming. But I think the good work will continue. And I hope to see you continue to do the good work in the future.
Well, I agree.
I hope to see you do it too. And all the best to you and to Warner Mendenhall and all of the heroic attorneys that are out there who could be making a lot more money doing something else, that's for sure, but are dedicating their lives to trying to preserve our freedoms and to preserve basically Western civilization.
Thank you.
Reggie Littlejohn, thank you so much for coming on today. You've been a wealth of information.
Thank you.
Sorry for all the glitches.
No problem. All's well that ends well.
Okay, I'm going to try to play a video, but let's see. It probably won't work. Yep, it's totally not going to work. So we're just going to go out raw. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a good one.
Thanks a lot.